Her love is conditional. Her respect is instinctual. You can beg her to stay. You can change for her, cry for her, twist yourself into shapes that resemble the man you think she wants. And maybe she'll smile. Maybe she'll sleep next to you for another week. Maybe she'll say, "You're such a good man." But in the pit of your stomach, you already know something's wrong, because she doesn't look at you the same. The fire in her eyes is gone. She flinches at your touch now. She rolls her eyes when you speak. The silence between you has become louder than her laughter ever was. She's slipping, slowly, like sand through open hands, and the tighter you grip, the faster she disappears. You were taught that love is sacrifice, that being emotionally available, vulnerable, communicative, honest. These are the foundations of a healthy relationship. You followed the rules. You read the books. You tried to be better than the men she cried about at 2 a.m. But here you are, alone, even when she's in the room, disrespected by the very person you tried hardest to honor. What no one told you is that a woman may love a man for what he gives, but she respects a man for what he is. And once respect dies, love starts rotting from the inside out. That's the wound. That's the trap. You're not alone. This story plays out in quiet apartments, across restaurant tables, behind closed bedroom doors. Men everywhere, good men, are discovering that love offered too freely becomes invisible. That being emotionally open without strength beneath it doesn't feel like courage. It feels like neediness. Here's the paradox. What feels like love to you, devotion, vulnerability, gentleness, can feel like weakness to her unless it's paired with something deeper, something primal, something that can't be faked. Power, sovereignty, internal gravity. She might never say it out loud. She might not even consciously know. But her instincts do. Her subconscious does. She can feel when a man is trying to earn her. She can smell desperation, like blood in the water. And no matter how nice you are, how faithful, how communicative, if your presence doesn't make her feel something visceral, if it doesn't command something ancient in her nervous system, she can't respect it. She can love you, but she won't respect you. And that's the beginning of the end. Because love without respect isn't devotion. It's toleration. And that is hell for a man who wants to be chosen, not pitied. Here's the ugly truth most men never get to hear. You were trained to believe that relationships are about emotional connection. That if you're just nice enough, open enough, soft enough, you'll be loved fully. And maybe in an ideal world, that would work. But we're not living in an ideal world. We're living in a world shaped by biology, psychology, and centuries of unspoken dynamics. You think her heart is the key, but it's her instincts you need to understand. A woman can logically appreciate your kindness and still feel dry in your presence. She can admire your effort and still fantasize about someone who barely texts her back. Why? Because the part of her that decides who she respects doesn't operate on logic. It operates on signals, confidence without arrogance, boundaries without cruelty, presence without performance, power without apology. You can't fake these things. You embody them, or you don't. But here's the twist. You don't have to be cold. You don't have to be toxic. You don't have to manipulate. You just have to stop thinking that love is earned through obedience, through compliance, through sacrificing your own center to orbit around hers. Because when you do that, when you abandon yourself, she loses something crucial. The gravity that keeps her drawn to you. The masculine pull that says, This man cannot be swayed. He is not begging. He is not chasing. He is becoming. That's what she's waiting for, even if she doesn't know it. So the question becomes, how do you stop giving your soul away in the name of love and become the kind of man she can't help but respect? That's where Machiavelli steps in. In another century, under dim candlelight and behind palace walls, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote something that would rattle every idealist to their core. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. To the modern man raised on Disney and therapy speak, this sounds like blasphemy. But to the man lying awake at night, replaying how he lost her after giving her everything, it feels like truth hiding in a different language. Now, before we misread him, understand this. Machiavelli wasn't advocating cruelty. He was exposing reality. The undercurrent beneath human relationships, kingdoms, and desires. The things people don't say out loud because they're too uncomfortable to name. And while his words were aimed at rulers and empires, they map eerily well onto modern intimacy. Because people haven't changed. We still chase power, admire strength, and instinctively recoil from weakness, even when we don't admit it. Nowhere is this more obvious than in how a woman relates to a man. If Machiavelli were alive today, he wouldn't be on podcasts talking about dating. He'd be in the shadows, watching, noticing. He'd see a generation of men confusing attention with admiration, sex with validation, and kindness with leverage. He'd see women growing colder in relationships with men who give more, do more, feel more, but stand for less. And he'd whisper, "She doesn't hate you. She just doesn't respect you." You see, Machiavelli understood something most men ignore until it's too late. People don't respond to your intentions. They respond to your position. You may have good intentions. You may want to love her, protect her, support her dreams. But if you are not positioned in her psyche as a man of substance, if your presence does not radiate conviction, control, and internal clarity, then those good intentions are filtered through the lens of weakness, not nobility. Machiavelli's model of power was psychological. It wasn't about overt dominance. It was about managing perception, controlling image. Understanding that influence isn't something you ask for. It's something you radiate. And that's where modern men fail. They reveal too much. They speak too soon. They seek reassurance. They apologize for having a spine. They try to win her with confessions and comfort when her nervous system is craving polarity, presence, and the unshakable edge of masculine containment. Machiavelli would see this clearly. He would say, "You are trying to be loved when you have not first commanded respect. That is why you lose both." It's not about being feared like a tyrant. It's about being felt as immovable, as unbothered by her tests, as a man so centered in himself that her affection becomes a reward, not a necessity. And Machiavelli would go further. He would tell you that love, true love, is volatile, conditional, prone to shift like wind. But respect, that runs deeper. That's not tied to mood or romance. That's wired into the brain, the way soldiers respond to their general, the way citizens obey the presence of law, the way a woman melts in the presence of a man she cannot shake. A wise ruler should rely not on what ought to be done, but on what is done. Then, translation, stop trying to be the man you think she wants. Start being the man reality respects. He'd point out that even good women, yes, even her, have moments where they lose desire for the man who places them on a pedestal. Not because they're evil, not because they don't appreciate kindness, but because evolution has wired them to respond to strength, not supplication. This isn't cynicism, it's biology wrapped in psychology. The lion gets followed, the deer gets devoured, even if she doesn't want to admit it, even if she fights it. She is magnetized by the man who doesn't need her approval to stand tall. That's why Machiavelli would never tell you to be cruel. But he would say this: never do too much at once. Leave room for awe. Let them wonder. You're trying to love her with transparency, but she respects the man who maintains mystery, who reveals himself like a riddle, not a resume, who gives just enough to earn her trust, but not enough to dull the thrill of his depth. Because in truth, respect is born not from how much you share, but from how well you control the frame. So ask yourself, are you trying to prove your worth? Or are you too busy embodying it? That's the pivot point. The first Machiavellian move. The moment you stop trying to be the man she wants and become the man you would follow. From here, we move inward, because the question isn't just how she sees you. It's, what kind of man are you when no one's watching? And that leads us into the next layer. The masculine core, the silent force she can't ignore. There is a kind of man who doesn't flinch when she withdraws, who doesn't chase when she pulls away, who doesn't raise his voice when she provokes or break down when she goes cold. He doesn't beg. He doesn't explain. He just watches, calm, composed, certain, and something in her, the part of her she doesn't talk about, aches in his presence. She wants to rebel against it, question it, test it, but she can't ignore it. Because this man carries something most have lost. Not bravado, not wealth, not fake confidence, a core, a silent axis around which his entire being spins. This is the masculine energy that doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't bark or flex or perform. It is, and its stillness, paradoxically, creates gravity. You feel it in men who don't rush their words, who don't over-explain, who don't adjust their behavior depending on who's watching. There's a weight to them, a tension, like a drawn bow, and a woman, whether she's conscious of it or not, feels safer in that tension than in any poem, playlist, or profession of love. Because safety, for the feminine, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from containment. Now stop. Think about the modern man. He's trained to be agreeable, accommodating, emotionally fluent. He walks on eggshells, fearing anything that might be labeled toxic. He trades his edge for empathy, his clarity for compliance. And what does he get in return? A woman who says, "You're such a nice guy," as she loses all desire for him. You see, niceness isn't the currency of desire. Presence is. Power is. Sovereignty is. And at the center of all three lies the masculine core. Jung called it the king archetype, not in the sense of ruling over others, but ruling over oneself. The man who doesn't collapse under pressure, who knows his mission, who brings order to chaos, not through force, but through essence. This kind of man doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't broadcast his values. He lives them, quietly, relentlessly. He is emotionally available, but not emotionally entangled. He can hold space for her rage, her confusion, her storm, and remain unmoved at his center. Not numb, not robotic, rooted, like a mountain in a hurricane. And that is what awakens something ancient in her. It's not logical. It's not even moral. It's biological, instinctual, subconscious. She respects the man she cannot unseat. So here's the hard truth. If you want her to respect you, You must first respect yourself enough to stop abandoning your center. That means you no longer react to her moods like they're weather you have to survive. You don't apologize for having standards. You don't dilute your intensity to make her feel more comfortable. Because your masculine energy, your direction, your solidity, your refusal to shrink isn't the problem. It's the magnet. And the minute you start negotiating it, trying to appease, trying to make her feel safe by becoming smaller, you lose the very tension that ignites her feminine. And without that, what's left? Friendship, pity, coexistence, but not respect. Never respect. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, what does she need from me right now, Chirui? Ask, what does this moment require from the king in me? Instead of thinking, how do I fix her feelings? Ask, how do I hold my frame with compassion without collapsing? You don't need to dominate her. That's fear, masquerading as strength. You just need to own the room of your mind so fully that no one else can rearrange the furniture. And from that place, speak less, move slower. Let silence do the heavy lifting. Don't explain yourself unless it's a strategy. Don't give away emotional real estate unless it's earned. And watch what happens. Watch her test you and then soften. Watch her challenge you and then melt. Watch her finally exhale, because she knows you can hold her storm without becoming it. This is the masculine core. It doesn't beg for respect, it evokes it. Machiavelli might have spoken of fear and admiration in terms of statecraft. Jung might have called it the balance of archetypes. But at its root, the truth remains. A woman cannot surrender to a man who has surrendered his edge. So, reclaim it. Because only when your center becomes unshakable will her respect become inevitable. And now, the next step. How do you translate all of this? Presence, power, polarity into your daily behavior? How do you live like a king in a world that rewards pleasers? That's where the Machiavellian shift begins. There's a line most men never realize they've crossed until they're already on their knees. It's the invisible boundary between being liked and being respected, between being a man she calls sweet and a man she cannot forget, between being a pleaser and a strategist. And here's the secret. Every woman will test you. Not because she's cruel, not because she's manipulative, but because some part of her needs to know. Can he hold me? Can he lead? Can he stay rooted when I'm spinning? If you fail the test, if you flinch, fold, explain, or ask, what's wrong? Something fractures. Slowly, subtly. Her admiration wilts, and what dies with it is the desire. Now here's where Machiavelli steps in, not as a cold-blooded manipulator, but as a tactician, a strategist, a man who understood the battlefield of perception. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Let that sink in. It means this. You may be kind, loyal, selfless, but what matters in the eyes of a woman, especially in the realm of desire, is how she experiences you, not what you are, what you signal. And most men are signaling the wrong thing. They signal need, over-availability, eagerness, emotional exposure without earned intimacy. They think honesty will earn them love. They think effort will earn them loyalty. But Machiavelli would raise an eyebrow and ask, to whom are you giving this truth? Who earned it? You've been taught that openness is virtue. But Machiavelli would argue that information, emotional or strategic, is power. And power must be managed, not thrown at her feet. Here's the pivot. The Machiavellian shift is not about deception. It's about discipline. It's about managing how you're perceived, not to manipulate, but to command respect before affection. So, what does this shift actually look like? Let's start with 3 transformations. 1. From oversharing to controlled mystery. You think telling her everything builds connection. It doesn't. It dilutes polarity. Real desire thrives in unknowing, intention in curiosity. Stop explaining your every move, every thought, every past heartbreak. Speak in headlines, not paragraphs. Let her ask. Let her wonder. Mystery doesn't mean being dishonest. It means being selective. 2. From pleasing to leading. Most men are constantly adjusting. Is she okay? What does she need? Did I mess up? Stop. A king does not orbit. He leads, with vision, with direction. Start asking yourself, what do I want? Then move decisively in that direction. Invite her into your world. Don't try to crawl into hers. And when conflict arises, because it will, don't seek to fix her feelings. Hold the frame. A Machiavellian doesn't patch over chaos. He brings order by remaining calm, clear, and firm. 3. From full access to earned intimacy. The more available you are, the less value your presence holds. This is the painful truth. You cannot buy her respect with constant presence. Your attention must be earned, not given in endless supply. Set boundaries. Maintain your mission. Protect your energy like it's gold. Because it is. Now, here's where it gets surgical. Every time you feel the urge to reassure her, to text back instantly, to explain yourself, pause. Ask, am I doing this to gain favor or to maintain my frame? A Machiavellian man doesn't act from emotion. He acts from strategy, rooted in self-respect. This isn't about playing games. It's about refusing to be played. You become a strategist when you see the terrain, her moods, her tests, your own triggers, and navigate it without losing altitude. You don't punish her. You don't reward bad behavior. You simply remain consistent in who you are. You don't react. You respond with calm, delayed intensity. You make her feel your absence when you are disrespected, not through ghosting, but through withdrawal of access. You correct through behavior, not lectures. Because here's what Machiavelli would teach you. A prince must imitate the fox and the lion, for the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Be the lion in presence. Be the fox in strategy. Too many men are only the lamb. This is the shift. Not toward cruelty, not toward manipulation, but toward conscious control of your frame. The moment you stop trying to win her approval and start commanding it through disciplined presence, you stop playing her game. You become the man she's forced to level up to meet. And here's the final piece. How do you do all this without becoming cold, without turning into a detached cynic? How do you wield power with grace, strength with warmth? That's where we finish. Earning true respect without losing your soul. There's a moment every man comes to, when the silence after her absence no longer echoes with questions. Not because he has answers, but because he no longer needs them. That's when you realize power isn't loud. It's not domination. It's not icy detachment or calculated charm. It's not Machiavellian masks, nor emotional shields forged out of bitterness. It's something deeper. It's the choice to remain sovereign in a world and in a love that constantly asks you to give that sovereignty away. And here lies the final paradox. To earn her deepest respect, you must be willing to walk away from her completely. Not as a threat, not as a strategy, but as a truth. You must become the kind of man whose values are so rooted, whose purpose is so alive, whose center is so calm, that no woman, no rejection, no storm can move you off course. And here's the beauty. That's exactly what awakens her devotion. Because deep down, she doesn't want to rule you. She doesn't want you caged by her moods. She doesn't want a servant. She wants a man who chooses her, but doesn't need her to feel whole. A man who can be warm, open, connected, and still utterly untouchable in his truth. Not cold, not cruel, clear. That's the space between Machiavelli and soul, between strategy and sincerity. The man who commands respect without sacrificing his heart. Let's be real. Many men take the wrong path after waking up. They go from simps to savages. They swing from people-pleasing to pick-up artistry, from over-invested to emotionally unavailable. And in doing so, they mistake numbness for power. That's not what she needs. And that's not who you are. True masculinity isn't brittle. It's not armored. It's not reactive. It's not a game of withholding affection just to feel in control. True masculinity is embodied clarity. It's being deeply rooted in yourself and being capable of loving fully without ever losing your center. It's feeling her pull away and not panicking. It's hearing her criticism and not collapsing. It's holding space for her emotion without absorbing it. And yes, it's walking away when respect is no longer mutual, without spite, without revenge, without desperation. Just silence, just distance, just closure from within. That's what she remembers, not your flowers, not your poems, not your desperate monologues begging for one more chance. She remembers the weight of your presence and the chill of your absence. Because that's what real kings do. They don't chase loyalty. They command it. And they release what won't rise to meet them. Machiavelli might have taught you how to see the field, how to manage perception, how to own the narrative. But soul teaches you when to let go with grace. And when the two meet, when strategy bows to integrity and power is wielded with love, you become the rarest kind of man, feared by the weak, respected by the worthy, loved by those who've earned it. So now, ask yourself, are you becoming that man? Not the one who seeks to be loved at any cost. Not the one who retaliates when he's disrespected, but the one who holds the line with presence, with strength, with soul. Because when you do, when you rise into the fullness of that man, she will feel it, even in your silence, especially in your silence. And if she's worthy, she will return, not to the boy who once chased her, but to the man who finally stopped.